All eyes are on the DMV this weekend as the Commanders travel to Baltimore to face the Ravens. And we want to start with this matchup, a little bit of an unheralded matchup that I think could play a big role in the outcome of this game. And it's basically the middle of that Ravens offense. So the tight ends that we all know and love, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, the running back, Derrick Henry, and the runner at quarterback, and Lamar Jackson against this Washington Commanders linebacker duo, which looks like this early on this season, two new guys in the fold there. Bobby Wagner obviously comes over from Seattle, and Frankie Louvu, who came over from Carolina. Those guys have been the key to any sort of success the Commanders have had so far this season. So, Kyle, I'm going to start with you. How do you see this matchup playing out, and why did you want to highlight this one specifically?
Well, when I look at a defense, I look at it like a strength coach would look at a body. You got your lower body strength, which is the front seven, and then you got your arms, your shoulders, your traps, all that stuff. That's the back end, and it's all connected by that core, the core of the defense, which is the two guys in the middle, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and I think with Derrick Henry, with Lamar Jackson, the threat of the running game at the line of scrimmage, and coupled with those tight ends that you just introed with, there's going to be a lot on their plate in terms of buying into the run, not biting on the fakes, getting back to their drop spots, because we know Mark Andrews is as experienced as anybody is getting open, and Isaiah Likely, obviously an explosive threat every time he gets the football in his hands. So I'm going to be watching the middle of that field right beyond the line of scrimmage to see how much suck that play action can generate and how much respect they showed to Derrick Henry in that running game throughout the game, B-Mac.
And when it comes to the respect for Baltimore's running game, you have to understand and know that when the running game is going, it's hard to defend their tight ends in the passing game. It's hard to defend the play action. And there lies the opportunity for guys like Allen and Payne to be significant contributors to help the running game, to take some pressure off of the backers that you referenced. Because if those guys don't control the line of scrimmage, it will force the backers to be overly aggressive. Anytime they get a read option, RPO look, they gotta attack it. But if Payne and Allen can control the line of scrimmage, it takes some pressure off of their inside backers.
Yeah, I think when I look at this Ravens offense and what they do from a formational perspective, I think you better have some veteran linebackers if you're going to try to shut them down, because they do so much in terms of the personnel they use. They'll use those two tight ends, but then they'll also put a fullback on the field at the same time, get really heavy, and then still run passing concepts out of it. Or they'll spread you out and put those two tight ends outside the formation, go look at a four wide look, and then you have to get those linebackers at the second level kind of spreading out, but still having to play the run because Derrick Henry's in there. And obviously, if you forget about him, it could go really bad for you, as the Bengals found out at the end of that game last week. So I do think that this one ends up being a wash, and that they're able to at least handle what the Ravens are going to do from the play action game. But then the problem is the Ravens can beat you any which way. They don't have to necessarily play that game. They can just say, hey, Zay Flowers, hey, Rashad Bateman, go out and win one-on-one the outside. And they trust that those guys can. So I want to flip to the other side of the ball here. Or go ahead.
Real quick, Mike, could I say something in regards to the running game? I know Mark Andrews has been overly criticized with how being missing in the passing game, but he's done a great job run blocking. Like Mark Andrews, I know he hasn't been a contributor catching passes and catching touchdowns, and fantasy owners are going crazy because they haven't seen him in the stat sheet. But when it comes to run pro and what he's done in the running game, Ronald Stanley and Mark Andrews they've been their best run blocking players on the offense, paving ways, running lanes for Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. So he's been effective in other areas of their offense, not catching the football and not scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, there's not many tight ends that you can say are out there leading the way. And it's funny, that wham play that we saw ran to start the game, you saw everybody and myself in studio. I was talking about that wham block, leaving Ed Oliver untouched, Patrick Ricard, but then who's out there leading the way? It's the former All-Pro tight end, Mark Andrews, going and getting on his guy, plastering, as you guys say in the secondary. He's plastering his guy at the third level of defense. They have bought in. They understand that they're not always going to be heralded in the passing game because of the luxury of having a guy like Derrick Henry. But when they get their opportunity, they take their shots in the run blocking as well. I love that from BMAC.
Yeah.
Let's flip to the other side of the ball here. Jaden Daniels. This Baltimore Ravens defense that he's facing has been a little Jekyll and Hyde over the course of this season, right? You have the rough outing last week against the Bengals, but the week prior, they shut down a red hot Bills offense. Then you have them shut down the Cowboys in the first half of that game, but then put up almost let the Cowboys come back into that one the second half of the game. And then the week before that, they had shut down the Raiders for 3 quarters. And then the Raiders all of a sudden stormed back in the fourth quarter. So they've been really up and down. Which Raiders defense, BMAC, or excuse me, which Ravens defense do we think we see against Jaden Daniels this week?
Well, for the offense they're facing off against, I think we're going to see a pretty successful Ravens defense. And the reason why I say that, guys, is because the strong suit for Washington offensively is running the football, right? Their offense mimics the Baltimore Ravens running attack in so many ways. Number one, they're 1 and 2 in the NFL in rushing offensively, right? Baltimore's number 1 in rushing yards. Washington, they're number 2. But then when you look at the Ravens defense, they've done a great job against opposing offenses rushing attack. They're currently sitting at number 1 in the NFL defensively in rushing yards allowed. That has been what they've been hanging their hat on. The other numbers, the other issues that we've watched have been more so in the passing game. So one would think Washington would do what they've done the entire season is try to get the running game going. And if that's the case, they kind of play into the hand, into the strong suit of what the Ravens defensively have done well, which has been stopping the run. So I think they're going to be successful. Now, can they hold up in the back end? Can that second level guys hold up in coverage? I don't know. We have yet to see that because they've been giving up some quality yards in the passing game. But when it comes to the running game in the trenches, I mean, they've done a great job. So if I'm Washington, no question, you got to find a way to get the running game going. You don't want to be one-dimensional, but you have to stay patient. That's where Jaden Daniels comes into play. Because when he becomes a +1, he is unaccounted for in the running game. Get Jaden Daniels going. He has to, in my opinion, I'm giving you a stat line that's super important for his success and their team's success offensively. He has to rush for at least 80 yards, in my opinion, for them to have success running the football. Because just handing it to the running backs, generically and running north and south, that's not going to work for 4 quarters against Baltimore.
Yeah, and I love what Washington has done with their protection plan. They have reduced a lot of these formations and they get into heavy personnel, or not heavy personnel, but they really commit to pass blocking, and it allows this guy to sit back there, Jaden Daniels. He's comfortable in the pocket. You can see it. He is calm and collected. You know, I'm not sure what's going on internally in his head, but what we've seen externally is pretty darn good from this young guy, and it's all about the commitment to protecting him. I'm going to do a breakdown this Sunday on CBS Sports about this, but I think that it couples well and it mimics their run game formations with what you're talking about, B-Mac. It kind of mimics the Ravens style of offense where you run the football, you run the football, you run the football, boom, we're downtown with it and there's nothing you can do. And our quarterback's clean because these formations lend themselves to protecting the quarterback in the pass as well.
I'll say this from a Commander's perspective. I guess from a Ravens perspective, one of the reasons that makes the guys like Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson so difficult is that you don't see QBs with that level of juice, right? Like week in and week out. It's one of the reasons why Lamar versus the NFC in his career is 21-3, right? Like when you don't get to see a guy like that regularly, you just don't have a handle on just how fast he is and just how much you have and just the kind of angles you need to corral that guy in space. And that's one of the reasons for Jaden Daniels, I think, early success in his career is just people just like aren't quite understanding the level of twitch this guy possesses. But with the Ravens defense, they've seen it in practice for the past 7 years, right? This is nothing new to them to be able to corral a quarterback of that mold that has that aspect to his game. So I think, to your point, B-Back, the rushing game and Jaden Daniels as a runner, I think the Ravens have seen a lot of that. They've seen a lot of that in practice over the years and know how it's supposed to look and know how to defend runs of that nature. Now, it's obviously easier said than done. Daniels is quite the weapon in his own right. But I think this Ravens defense specifically should be well prepared for the rushing threat at the quarterback position.